All right, guys, before we hop into today's episode, I want to tell you that it probably makes more sense if you watch the new Netflix documentary called Amy Bradley is Missing. It's kind of taken the internet and a lot of people by storm. It's widely popular. A lot of people have watched. I'm sure most of you have watched this, to be honest with you. But I'm just putting this out there because there will be some context loss considering we just kind of jump right into it. So check that out. Maybe hop back in. It's only 3 parts. It's like 40 minutes each, so you should get it done really quickly. But today I'm joined by her brother, Brad Bradley. So really fascinating stuff and some interesting things that really he did not get to the in the documentary. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, that's all I got. Before we get into it, though, I do want to talk about Chevy Drive Chicago. Chevy Drive Chicago has everything you need to shop and buy smart at your local Chevy dealer. Great styles, the latest tech. You'll look good and feel good about what you're driving. Now is the time to get into the Chevy family of EVs. Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV. Take advantage of all incentives today. Don't wait. Go to ChevyDriveChicago.com to find your local dealer and drive one today. You need to get your Chevy, folks. It's that simple. Summer's kind of wrapping up here, so maybe you're trying to squeeze one more summer out of that car, but I hate to say it, but winter will be here. The crappy weather will be here before you know it, so you want to make sure you got a sturdy vehicle. And look no further than Chevy. I'm a big fan of the Traverse. It's got the captain seat. It's a little bigger, but maybe you don't need all that space. Maybe an Equinox or a Blazer is perfect for you. Regardless of what you want to do, head to ChevyDriveChicago.com to find your local dealer today. And yeah, just make sure you're driving Chevy. I also want to talk about Pardon My Cheesesteak. Part of My Cheesesteak has a brand new combo on its menu, introducing the big one. An original classic cheesesteak, your choice of our brownie bites or donut dippers, and a drink, all for a discounted price. Perfect for your game day meal or late night eats. Part of My Cheesesteak offers a wide variety of cheesesteaks, loaded fries, and popular desserts, all delivered right to your door. Go to partofmycheesesteak.com to order with code PMC20 for 20% off. Go check that out, and let's get into today's show. All right, Big today is Thursday. It is July 24th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Today, I am joined on Zoom by Brad Bradley. He is a brother of Amy Bradley, big viral Netflix documentary series that just went live last week. Kind of taken over by storm, Brad. Just want to first see how you are. How's your family doing now that kind of all this interest has been drummed back up?
Yeah, it's been a little crazy. I tried to go on X and TikTok to provide some information that wasn't included on the docuseries and try to make people aware of certain things that they don't know about. And I didn't realize what that was going to turn into. Trying to answer everybody's questions and my face has been on my phone for the last 5 days nonstop, and it's testing. I mean, a little anxiety, not sleeping real well, can't keep the thought process from I can't stop it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years where you don't dwell on all the stories and all the details, and since this has come up, it's tough, but you do it anyway. And, we're searching for Amy, searching for answers, searching for justice. And, we just keep pushing. But it's been crazy to see the outreach from around the world, from everybody, and all the well wishes and the prayers and the thoughts and, the caring. It's awesome. I try not to look at the negative side of what I'm seeing on social media about me or my family or whatnot. That's hard to look at. But over the years, we've kind of become accustomed to that, and our skin's a little thicker than it used to be. So just kind of ignore it and move on.
Yeah, I can't imagine, man. And that's kind of what you said off the jump. What I want to kind of go through today is obviously people are so interested in it. People want to help. People want to, learn more. So, what are the big things that you've been kind of letting people know that the Netflix documentary didn't show within the 3 hours of the scope?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, it could have been 5 seasons at least. And that would have been required to cover all the information. And I'm not a well rehearsed vault of information like my mom is on every single detail. I mean, I had a lot going on, back then, and going to college and trying to live life and working. And, my parents kind of kept a lot of things from me that weren't necessary for me to hear. But it's, shoot, I'm sorry. I
No,
lost my
you're
train of.
okay. You're okay, man. I was just saying the big things. I know there was reports. I saw your last tweet about the decking part open where the neighbor could have
Yeah.
come to that
Yeah. We
side.
never knew that. That, kind of put a pit in my stomach when I saw that. And, people have come on and said that, only the staff can open the thing, and if both rooms agree to it and that kind of thing. So I don't know. Your mind goes kind of wild with running scenarios and the neighbor next door and all kind of stuff. But I don't know. The things that I initially put out on the X page were one, a theory that has been long suspected by me and my family that has never been paid attention to or gained any traction. I interviewed about it at length when we did the Netflix interview, but it was excluded again. I mean, no media organization has wanted to talk about the Scientology story as it related to Amy's case. And if you want me to explain what I mean, for the listeners and the people watching that haven't seen what I posted, I am happy to do that.
Yeah, please. You're welcome to talk about Scientology on this show. So whatever it is, I didn't
Yeah,
hear this.
you feel guilty about casting dispersions on an organization as strange and as they may be. But anyway, the night before Amy disappeared, she during the pool party she was speaking with these two black ladies off to the side, kind of over in a section of chairs and tables, away from the dance floor and the bar and the band and all that stuff. Those ladies were wearing matching uniforms, which I recall to be, navy blue skirts, kind of just past knee length, and then these lighter colored Oxford blue button-up shirts. She, spoke with them for upwards of an hour, and I remember standing next to my parents, and we're looking over there like, what the heck is she? Who is she talking? Like here with coworkers and friends, and trying to have time, and she kind of stuck off to the side having a private conversation with two strangers. So my parents eventually went over when they were about to go to bed and just said, "Hey, Amy, look, we're heading in. Love you. See you tomorrow." And she, said the same. So, and when my parents walked over, they weren't talkative. They didn't introduce themselves. My parents found it to be a little bit odd that they had been fairly animated before. And then when they walked over, they kind of made it clear they didn't want to talk to my parents. So, okay, so they go to bed. The next day, morning, we wake up, the story of Amy disappearing and the last time she was seen, the cruise line telling us that they did a full search when, we later found out that that wasn't the case. They assured us that Amy was not on the boat after conducting the search that they claimed to have done, and recommended that we get off on the island of Curacao in case she were to be found in the water, because there was an ongoing search with divers and helicopters and boats and all kinds of stuff looking in the canal and the waterway leading into the island, in the area that the boat would have been in about the time frame she went missing. So we agreed, trusting that everything on the ship had been done. The president of my dad's company at the time and his wife got off with us to help us, because we were in rough shape and kind of in no shape to handle things on our own at that point. So they got us a hotel room. I believe it was called the Otrabanda on the waterway and canal of Curacao, and spent a lot of time in the room. Again, it was a bad scene. Our parents were a wreck. A lot of crying, a lot of contacting family and talking to everybody. My mom later requested a priest from the president of my dad's company to come speak with us. And apparently and whether it was a U.S. consulate or my dad's boss or not, they called around to several local churches and weren't able to find a priest. So they called us to let us know that. Later, at about midnight, we get a knock on the door, and two men came in full kind of naval attire, looked like in all whites. At least one of them was, and introduced themselves as officers from the Scientology ship called the Free Winds. So, we weren't aware of anybody calling them or telling them where we were, inviting them to our room, but we let them in. They explained to us that they had various methods to help people and families that were dealing with loss and grief and so forth. So we let them in, and they proceeded to run these kind of verbal exercises. I don't know whether you call it auditing or whatever they do, but they'd ask us about, they'd have us repeat this phrase: "Now that Amy's gone, tell us what you haven't lost." And so we'd each take turns doing that. We haven't lost each other. We haven't lost our friends and family at home, and so on. And that went on for a little while. And then it shifted to a second part where they asked us a lot of specific information about Amy. If she smoked, what were her favorite cigarettes? If she drank, what was her favorite beer? What were her favorite snacks? And so on. A lot of very specific things about what Amy liked and what Amy did, and that kind of thing. The last part, it came down to what I've since learned is some sort of nerve assist, I think is what they refer to it as, where they lay each one of us down on the bed separately, kind of lay hands on you and rub up your back. And that went on for about a minute until my dad spoke up and asked them to leave. He's like, "All right, guys, we thanks for your help, but I'd like for y'all to leave now." They invited us on the ship, the Free Winds, and we declined. So that theory to me has, I've talked about it in countless interviews, different news organizations, and all the media we've done over the years. And people think this is just something I'm now remembering and coming out with. I mean, I've talked about it since day one. Got home from the ship over the next couple of weeks and researched Scientology. And as far as what I found, I remember finding uniforms that matched what those two ladies were wearing the night before Amy disappeared. So my suspicion or my theory, and only, it's just a potential possibility of what happened, is that, maybe there were, those two women were Sea Org recruiters. Maybe they convinced her to meet them in the morning. And again, this flies contrary to a lot of the predominant theories about the eyewitness sightings and about Alistair Douglas and so forth. And he may still have been involved and facilitated the meeting, or who knows? Again, your mind kind of goes crazy. So if she were to have agreed to meet those ladies, go on that ship, and then not be able to get off, that was my concern. The FBI has always been largely dismissive of the theory. Again, no one else will report on it or talk about it. Since starting the X page and getting a flood of information about who to talk to, including Aaron Levin Smith with a podcast called Growing Up in Scientology. He's actually an ex-Sea Org member. Tony Ortega, who I don't know a lot about, and I think I understand he's not actually ex-Scientology, but he's anti-Scientology and does a lot of articles and things. I've emailed back and forth with Claire Headley, who was the wife of a guy named, I believe, Mark Headley, who they were way high up in the Sea Org. I think even above Mike Render, from what I understand. My mom has spoken at length to a lady named, I believe it's Yeleska Paris, who was on the Free Winds for a lot of years. And I believe the story is she escaped. I mean, I don't know. But each and every one of these people has reached out to us and returned our calls. With the exception of Leah Remini, we've never been able to get her to respond to any of our requests for comment, or requests for help, rather. But each one of these people explained to me that, in their opinion, they found it to be extremely unlikely, an extremely unlikely scenario. That the Sea Org is the highest order of Scientology. You can't join on that boat. You have to go through a rigorous process of, auditing and interviews and security profiles and all kind of stuff. They didn't know of any previous history of people being just kidnapped onto the boat. Of course, there are stories about people being put in isolation and these work details and, heavy work days and all that kind of stuff, and people trying to escape and people having escaped. But again, the information that I've gotten since I put that theory out there, although you don't know really who to believe or what to believe, has put that theory to rest a little bit in my mind. And I feel, finally, after 27 years, I feel like I've gotten some answers and at least a little bit of feedback on, people that were actually there. I think Claire Headley was on the boat during that time, and she states that she doesn't recall anything about it. She doesn't think Amy was on that boat. And so that's that one theory. So who knows? The second thing I put up on there is, Netflix, and I don't want to throw any shade on Netflix. We think they did a tremendous job with the series. We all feel like they've, single-handedly revitalized Amy's name and Amy's story and people's interest around the world, where, to the point where, first time in 25 years, everybody is paying attention and everybody is trying to help. So I put information on the X platform regarding, the focus on Amy's sexuality toward the middle and end of that documentary. What was excluded was the fact that Amy had a boyfriend for several months leading up to that cruise. And they had flown him out for about 5 hours worth of interviews and just completely excluded him altogether. I don't know why. I guess it didn't fit the lesbian narrative. But anyway, I thought it was important for people, if you're going to paint a picture and talk about someone's sexuality, to be complete about it. So I put that out there just so people know. And of course, I've gotten a lot of positive reactions to it and a lot of negative reactions to it. We get a
Wow.
lot.
Is there any reason why you think they would do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's just kind of how they wanted to craft the way the narrative was told. That's like you said.
Yeah, I can't tell you,
Huh.
why it would have been excluded. I mean, I will be, full disclosure. Amy had written Tom a letter. I don't know exactly when, but shortly before the cruise, kind of telling him that, she's had a great time and she really enjoys, spending time with him and spending time with his family. And, but that things were moving a little fast and she kind of wanted to take it slow and take a little bit of a step back. And then the message in a bottle thing to Molly, I do know that to be a real thing. She sent that to Molly 1 month, I think on February 24th, 1998. And I don't doubt that she and Molly had plans to, perhaps get back together. But that wasn't the point of me to argue about her liking women or liking men or whatever. I just thought I'd share that piece of information was left out, and how they portrayed Amy was not inaccurate completely, but incomplete for sure.
Okay. And I guess one thing I would ask Brad is what makes it so unplausible to you that she maybe did fall over the edge and she did fall into the water?
Yeah. So the first thing is that, the very first time. Well, all right. Let me back up to the very beginning. When we first found out we were going on the cruise, you'll hear people talk about online as a lot of people talking that don't really know what the story is, and they'll say Amy didn't want to go on the cruise and her family forced her to go on the cruise, and the only hesitation Amy had about going on the cruise is because she's scared of what's in the ocean. So being in the boat and being out in the middle of the ocean was she was apprehensive about that. So that having been said, we get on the boat, we show up to our room. We're all very excited. I mean, she and I planned, we packed together, we were talking about what we were going to do. There was absolutely no truth to anyone forcing her to come on the trip. We both really wanted to come. And so Amy and I flew down separately. We boarded the ship. We get to our room, and when this with what when what I'm about to explain to you happened, it was dark. So we go out on the balcony. We're up on the eighth level, so we're way up over the water. I don't know how many feet, but however tall 8 stories is. And I lean on the rail and I look straight down at the water, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Amy, come look at this!" And she was like, "Nope." Wouldn't come towards the rail. At no time during the first several days of the cruise would she even get near it. People that suspect she was, so drunk that she got sick and climbed up on a table and leaned way over the rail. I mean, if she was going to be sick, I promise you that she would have come inside to get sick. She's not going to lean over the rail that she's terrified of approaching. And plus she's, 5'6", if that. The rail is at least 42 inches tall. Her center of gravity is, much lower than the rail, and she would have had to have climbed up on something, which, by the way, she didn't have to do because she was tall enough to puke over the rail without climbing on a table. Mm-hmm. So I just don't believe that. I just don't believe that theory is plausible. Just because I knew how she reacted to getting close to the rail, the first couple of days we were on the ship, and she just wouldn't have any part of it.
Yeah, because that whole jumping off and trying to race the boat to the pier,
that's something Yellow said in his interview, which is full of lies. I mean, I don't doubt that she claimed that she could have kicked his ass in a swimming race. I mean, she and I both swam our whole lives. We grew up on the swim team. She was a lifeguard. She actually was a swim coach for one of the neighborhood swim teams in our area. So we were both really, great swimmers. And so I don't doubt she playfully said that to him, but in no way was there any seriousness to it. Because again, the day before in Aruba, we get in the water. Once she gets, past her knees, she jumps on my dad's back, for the half hour that we're in the ocean. Because if she were to have stepped on something or something hit her, foot or leg, she would have freaked. So the idea of her jumping in the dark, I mean, I understand the sun was, on its way up, but jumping in the ocean, although we were really close to the island, when she was terrified of what's in the ocean, and terrified of getting near the rail in the first place, I just don't find it to be a possibility. She had a brand new job. She had just graduated from college. She had just gotten a new apartment. She had just gotten a brand new English bulldog puppy that she'd wanted her whole life. She was buying gifts for friends. She was writing postcards to friends talking about what she was going to do when she got back. So that theory's just not it, man.
Yeah. So it's pretty much full confidence that she walked through that door.
Yeah. FBI, unfortunately, we kind of feel like they've washed their hands of further investigating, even as new information and people, in the TikTok world and the X world are trying to, piece things together. They seem uninterested because, quote unquote, Mr. and Mrs. Bradley, we don't have any evidence that she left the room. Well, you don't have any evidence that she didn't either. So let's start with that. Other than the fact that the two girls, Lori Rennick and Crystal Roberts, that claim to have seen Amy go up the glass elevator with Yellow between 5:30 and 6 a.m., their mother let them back into their room when they came back after having seen Amy and Yellow. So there's no data as far as what time they came back to the room. But we found out literally night before last, after speaking to the mother and speaking to the FBI agent on the case, that the mother was never even interviewed to corroborate their story. No one ever spoke to her. So, the mother and my mom talked to her mom. She said, yeah, absolutely. I let those girls in after that time frame. And no one has ever contacted me to question that or to corroborate their story. The girls have told me recently that they felt as though they were just treated like two little drunk teenage girls that didn't have any sense. When we got back on the boat, after having gotten off in Curacao, The authorities and the harbor police and all that kind of stuff assured us that she was not in the water. We fly back to St. Martin to reboard the ship. At that point, the cruise line had their attorneys on board, waiting to introduce themselves to us. Interpol was involved. My family from home had gotten the FBI involved, so they were on their way. Um, and then we sailed with the ship to St. Thomas as they conducted interviews and all that kind of thing. But the when we I'm sorry, let me back up. So my mom and I, we obviously nobody was sleeping. We couldn't eat, we couldn't sleep, we couldn't think, we couldn't stop crying. My mom and I are in the hallway near our room trying to retrace Amy's steps and think through, all right, where could she have gone? All that kind of thing. And Crystal and Lori saw us. And I mean, like they'd seen a ghost, they ran up to us breathless and were freaking out saying, we've been looking for you. We saw Amy and Yellow go up the elevator. I mean, they are 100% sure. And have maintained that for 27 years. The FBI can't be bothered to interview the mother that let them back in the room to corroborate their time frame. And then we can get into the whole thing about Yellow's latest interview with James Renner, where he, lies through the whole thing. I
What
saw it.
I didn't see that one because I am curious about that. Obviously, he plays a whole big part in this, and his
Yeah.
daughter coming to light and kind of seemingly trying to get him to fess up to something was certainly a jaw dropping moment throughout the whole documentary. So yeah, what's the latest on Yellow?
Well, we don't know. I mean, he lives in Grenada. He's reverend at a church. Apparently, he performs exorcisms, from what I've heard. Don't know how much truth there is to that. He's had a lot of years to rehearse his story. And unfortunately, when you tell a lot of lies throughout the course of your life, you have to remember each one of them, especially if you're going to do an interview, which you can find a link to on my page. I posted that YouTube interview with him, which happens to be the first and only interview I've seen of him ever. But he claims to all these false statements about my dad forcing her to go on the cruise, about the fact that he was back in his room at 1 a.m. when the key card system from the security officer's report shows that it was 3:30 or 3:35. He checked into his room. So you don't lie when you're telling the truth. There's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of things that have changed about his story. And we believe with, the latest technologies and AI and, I don't know how good polygraphs were back then. I've always known that they're inadmissible in court and they only hold so much weight, and can be manipulated and passed even if. But, I feel like, we've been trying to get the attention of, President Trump's administration and the new FBI and the new DOJ to kind of help us with the resources and the effort to kind of reopen and re-question and re-polygraph with all this information that's being, talked about and compiled online. I feel like it's, not enough effort has been made over the years because I believe the FBI thinks that she either jumped or fell. And again, they say there's no evidence that supports she left the room. Well, clearly there's no evidence to say she didn't either, and except for the two girls that claim they saw her and so forth. So, it's been a frustrating way to live over the past 27 years, to be told nothing and feel like you're not really being helped to the extent that's available.
Yeah, I can imagine that's infuriating and very frustrating. And I think one thing that people would always ask towards that, and the question I had, have you guys personally been back to Curacao or Barbados? Have you guys had personal boots on the ground down there?
Well, a couple weeks after, like you see on the docuseries, myself, my dad, Amy's boyfriend at the time, my uncle, and we actually took a psychic with us. Back then you're reaching for, grasping for straws and trying anything you can. But yeah, we went back down there. We did the search. Another thing that people seem to be confused about and are actually accusing me of changing stories and, coming up with new things during that search. when you see on the docuseries the portrayal of us driving down a back road with bushes on both sides at night, and when I talk about hearing Amy call my name, it's portrayed in a way to make it seem like a single car drove past us on some back road, but actually we were sitting at a stoplight at a fairly busy intersection, with a subway on the corner, people on the sidewalks, cars turning each and every way. Unfortunately, I don't know where we were. I can't go on Google Maps and say that's where it was or anything like that. But we were sitting all in this SUV, sitting at a stoplight, waiting to turn left, and cars were turning from the other street coming, in front of us when I heard it. Now, what it seemed like to us is that it was coming from one of the cars that passed us, but it could have well been from the street. And unfortunately, instead of two of us jumping out and two of us following the car, we all followed the car, which, by the time we caught up to it way up on the mountain, it was just, a guy in his car by himself. But it was portrayed in a way that makes it, look like we were on some back road by ourselves. There's an old, I think it was either America's Most Wanted or Unsolved Mysteries or one of these things, that portrays it as if we're out on the sidewalk in the street when I hear it, walking around and looking in shops. And that wasn't true either. I mean, you have no control over how, these shows reenact these situations. But we were sitting in the car at a stoplight in a busy intersection with a lot of stuff going on, a lot of people everywhere when I heard that. And it was one of the most distinct things I can remember about, the entire search process was how I knew that was Amy calling my name. I mean, I'd heard it a million times before in my life before, and there was no question in my mind. I think we just turned our heads the wrong direction and missed her.
Damn. That's, yeah, if you could go back 2 and 2 for sure.
Yeah.
What about when you saw the ad? Was there any follow up to that?
Which ad?
The escort ad. Was there any follow up to that? Like, did you?
Yeah. Relentlessly, we searched for that girl, that Jazz. We never had a different name for her. That's the name that was given to us when the pictures were sent to us. I don't think we ever figured out who they were sent from, where they came from, where exactly those pictures were taken from, but we contacted every adult vacation escort type thing we could possibly find. We tried to have, investigators set up meetings or set appointments with this girl. We just never were able to locate her. Everywhere we tried and everywhere we called, no one had heard of this person. We'd give them pictures. They didn't know her. So, either they're covering and just telling us that, or who knows where that picture came from, and there's been a lot of speculation about those pictures. I mean, I think only a couple were shared on the docuseries. We've seen the whole full set. There are several, in my opinion, that are like, man, that really, really does look like her. And then there are a couple where I'm like, kind of, it doesn't really look like her to me. There's several of the pictures she's positioned in such a way where her tattoos are not visible. Other pictures, she's positioned in such a way that her tattoos, or at least a couple of them, should have been visible. But you don't know whether the pictures were edited, photoshopped, whether they covered the tattoos with makeup. I mean, so that doesn't really prove one thing or another to us. But yeah, there's no certainty in my mind that was her. But, you look at the forensics comparison and the FBI analysts that have looked at it and all the different tools and metrics they use to do that, and it's pretty compelling.
Was it them who said they believe it's her? The FBI? What'd you say? Sorry.
I said, yeah, the FBI did.
The FBI did.
Yeah.
What did they ever? I know you couldn't see when someone left. Did they ever find out the second time Yellow used his card?
I believe I've seen that question a lot, and I think I've answered it about 180 times. Yeah. Online, but it's I think, and don't quote me on this, I'd have to get with my mom and find the information, but I think there's like a 3:30, 3:35, and then there's like a 9 a.m. So, keep in mind he had a roommate, and I don't know whether the roommate was involved. You might think that he possibly could have been. Um, um, anytime, he could have let Yellow or Yellow and Amy back into Yellow's room, and there'd be no record of it. So, the key card entries, I believe, are around 3:30 and around 9 a.m. Now, when the morning she disappeared, or we realized she was missing, after my dad woke up, he initially just went out expecting he would find her. Came back to the room, got my mom. He was a little bit more panicked. They asked me to stay in the room in case she came back, and they kind of missed crossing paths with her. I stayed in the room for about a half an hour by myself. They eventually came back to get me and said, "Okay, come help us look." We go up, we look, we walk through all the hallways, all the common areas, all the bathrooms, everywhere we had been together. Throughout the course of the ship, we walked up on the pool deck. I walked up into the disco and looked all around and to the front of the ship and to the back of the ship, and as many places as we could think to look in, that we could look, in public areas. Once I had done that for, I don't know, the first half hour, 40 minutes, or I can't tell you the time frame really, but I sat down at a table by the pool, fairly exasperated, kind of had my hands and realizing that something was really wrong. And Yellow walks up to me. I believe it was around 7 a.m. I do think that they had reported it to the front desk, but no announcements had been made at the time. The first thing he said to me was, "Hey, man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister." Um, Now, at the time, it didn't register to me that perhaps he shouldn't yet have known that something had happened to my sister. But you look back on it, and it's like, well, shit. How did he know that early that there was something to be sorry about? So he said, "I left her at 3:30." So again, contradicting the timeline that he now gives, that he's back in his room at 1 a.m. He said, When did you last see her?" So as I start going into my timeline, I'm like, well, I came back to the room, and he's like, "Hold on a second. I want my brother to hear this." He walks away about 50, 60 feet away, where there's a group of guys who I assumed were his bandmates or other crew members were sitting. He gets one guy from the group, brings him back over to me and says, "Okay, go ahead." So again, naive me, I proceed to give them a timeline that they can get a story straight on, perhaps. I went through when the last time I saw her was, when I got back to the room, when she got back to the room, which was, I think, 3:35 and 3:40, respectively. Um, when I went to bed, and so forth. So, I gave them my timeline, but I find it strange even still that he interrupted me to stop telling him what I was telling him and to go get another guy so he could hear what I was telling him. So there's a lot of stuff over the years. When we got back from the cruise, there's a thing I've posted on X where there's a warning from something back then that was called the cruise critic board, that in all caps with a bunch of exclamation points, "If you run into this person, Yellow, please stay away," and a lot of other information. This was 2 weeks. Someone had posted this on that critic board before our cruise. So he was apparently had complaints filed against him before. Whether the cruise line knew about that or not, I don't know. Seems that they may have. So,
So someone in the band potentially knows something. Has anyone in the band been tried to track down?
yeah. So, we've had have investigators. We've had investigators look into it. You would assume the FBI would have done their due diligence. Not so sure on that issue, but yeah, we know who they are, and we're not done, looking into them. And again, if we can get the help of, you know, the Senate or anybody in Trump's administration, or Dan Bongino or Kash Patel, or anybody that can help us, not give up on this. Not just, I mean, obviously, number one is to find Amy if she's out there still. I realize I'm not an idiot. I realize that it's unlikely, but I also know the chance is not zero. So, our efforts here are, if your sister or your child is missing and you don't know anything other than she's missing, you don't give up. So, all the haters and the shit talkers online saying all this kind of toxic, poisonous stuff and about my family. Yeah, we're still trying. Yeah, there's a GoFundMe page set up, not because we're trying to make money for ourselves, but everything that's coming in. I mean, we're getting thousands of phone calls and emails and tips and things we have to follow up on, and investigators we have to hire and pay, and professionals and attorneys. And, there's a lot of cost involved there, and we don't have it, So, yeah, someone set up a GoFundMe page for us. Um, and we're doing everything we can. If we can't find Amy ultimately, then we're looking for justice, man. We're looking for to find out answers to what happened, to find out who's responsible, to hold somebody accountable. I'm not going to my grave as is, not knowing. I feel like we have the entire world behind us. It's been, like I said yesterday on TikTok, the single most heartening and amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life, to see everybody from around the world sending love and prayers. And yeah, sometimes some not so nice messages, but you try to ignore those and pay attention to the good things. So, we're here to fight. We always have been. We've never given up hope. That's the one thing that the not knowing and the lack of closure allows you to do, is to continue to live with hope. And I think living the past 27 years without any would have been a lot harder than what we've been living with.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so much more people trying to help and behind you guys than the negative stuff. So it's good. It's important that you know that. Is there refresh my memory again? What did she leave with? Well, was her camera there anywhere? What was?
Yep. We have her camera. It was in the safe in the room with all the film that she had brought. Okay. She had planned to enter some sort of photography contest when she got home. She was also planning to create a collage under a glass tabletop on her coffee table of all the pictures that she, was going to take on the cruise. So yeah, we have her camera. When we got home, we developed the film that she had used so far.
Was there anything on there that
not that we can tell? I mean, we poured over those things, and it's really just her taking pictures of us when we're on the outing on Aruba. There's not very many, but I can tell you that was a hard thing to look through those pictures when we got them back after coming home without her.
Mm-hmm. Did she have a room key when she left?
Say what?
Did she have her room key?
Yeah, the room key was unaccounted for.
Okay.
A ton of people keep asking about the shoes and the sandals that were left on the balcony. And I've answered this a ton of times, but just for everybody out there, yeah, she brought multiple pairs of shoes to the cruise, and they're still in her bag. We don't know how many she brought or which ones, so it's impossible for us to say which are missing, if any. So I don't know. I had walked around barefoot on that ship. The hallways are carpeted. It's not unlikely that if she was going to run out to grab some coffee, she would have just walked out. But yeah, the answer to the shoe question is we don't know. She brought, a bunch of shoes, and we don't know, not having kind of cataloged her entire shoe collection before we left. We don't know which ones she brought and which ones could be missing. So that part of the puzzle is just left up to conjecture.
Have you had any luck this past week with the IP addresses or anything like that? Is there any movement on that? I know that was kind of a big thing at the end there of the doc.
Yeah, that information is not very old. It even goes back to last year, if I'm not mistaken. I've been in contact with our computer team, the guys that are working on tracking that. And, I was a little taken aback that it was even mentioned in the series, just because, if you're tracking where people are looking to the site, you might not want to tip somebody off that they're being tracked. If people are watching or people have any any say as to her ability to use a computer and that kind of thing. But I do not have the latest information as to the last times um, this has occurred. I'm currently waiting to hear back. I was hoping to have that before I talk to you today. I just don't. But apparently, it's a difficult process. What people need to understand is the technology that at least we have access to only narrows it to a fairly big area, region on Barbados. We have no specific neighborhood. We have no specific address. We have, you know, things in the works, and I can't, I don't want to necessarily speak on what we have done or what we haven't done or what we're going to do in regard to that specific angle. I'm not sure, since I haven't spoken with the investigative team lately, how sensitive that may be. But yeah, we're obviously working on things as best we can.
And
There's
then,
only a few of us, man. It's literally like 7 or 8 people that is trying to handle influx of everything that we're getting.
yeah,
It's me
that's
myself on X and Twitter trying to now answer 80,000 people's questions. It's been tough and exhausting, and again, who cares? We keep on doing it.
yeah, and that's a lot. And this will be my last question, just because I have to know how you and your family felt about the cruise director. He's kind of made some waves. People are hammering this guy. I don't know if you have any thoughts about his demeanor or his, callousness, to be quite frank.
Well, yeah, it was fairly obvious how he feels about his passengers. You know, uh, I am not allowed to speak on the cruise line, but so much because uh, they kind of turned tables on us years ago, and we ended up having to sign a contract saying that we wouldn't mention the name of their company in combination with Amy's story. So we haven't ever done that since. But yeah, I think, in my opinion, his callousness and lack of empathy is fairly representative um, of these industries, and how they feel about their passengers. And it's always been my opinion that protecting the bottom dollar is more important to them than protecting their people.
Yeah.
Another question that I might add an answer to that I get a lot online is about the security cameras and recordings and those types of things. We asked them if there were any, the cameras that point down both sides of the ship um, that could record if anything were to go over. Where apparently we were told were just monitors, no recordings available. Rest assured, there were cameras in the casino recording, but none in public areas, none at the gangplank. Basically, every other camera on the boat is a monitor, not something that records any information. So there was nothing available to corroborate the girl's claims or what happened that morning or how she may have been um, uh, removed from the ship. I don't think she was taken off the main gangplank. Maybe she was. People don't know, but on the back side of those ships, there's all these bay doors, these big, huge doors that open up in the back, where they're taking trash off and resupplying the ship, and boats are coming and going, and all kinds of activity on the backside. Um, if what the girls state is true, that Amy went up the elevator with Yellow that morning, we understand that there's a crew elevator in the back of that club that goes straight down to crew quarters. Um, so he could have handed her off to someone, then came skipping back out from the thing by himself to walk past Crystal and Lori and not even look in their direction when, previous in the evening or prior that evening, he had been trying to holler at. So they found it very odd, and so do we.
Yeah. No, certainly is. Brad, thanks a lot for jumping on with me. Where can people find your X page and the GoFundMe and everything like that, so people could know where they could help?
Yeah, well, I don't. My X page is at Brad Rad 5 Bradley, and I guess there's a lot of Brad Bradleys out there. Believe it or not, I couldn't get my name, so I had to kind of do a little futzing with that. But it's BRAD, the number five, and then BRADLEY. The TikTok page that I've not done a whole lot on, but people have been, clamoring for information there as much as they have on X. My page there is at Amy Bradley is missing. The tip line is 804-789-4Amy, which is 804-789-4269. The email tip line is amybradleyismissing@gmail.com. Her website is amybradleyismissing.com. And for everybody asking all these very specific questions about all the different sightings, all of that detail is on that website. So it's going to be impossible here for me in the next week when I return to my full-time job to keep up with all of this. I'm going to try my best to, still be active on there, but I'm not going to be able to continue to answer questions like I have. I'm planning with a friend of mine who's familiar with how TikTok works on doing a live stream to answer people's questions in real time in the coming days. I haven't been able to kind of figure that out, but I'm working on doing that. Yeah, but we maintain that we've had this gut feeling that Amy's always still been out there. Whether that be true or not, we're not going to give up. And somebody out there knows something. We know that. You said that yourself. I think everybody knows that. And, I hope with this outpouring of attention, someone finally grows a conscience and finds it within themselves to come forward and say what they know. So please help us. Please help us find Amy. Please help us get justice for Amy. Please help us get some accountability, for what was done and what wasn't done and who was responsible. And please help us, human trafficking is an absolutely evil and horrible thing. And it's a very real thing and a much bigger thing than people know about. If there's anything that we can be a part of in the future to help try to minimize the chance that this happens to someone else's daughter or someone else's loved ones, that is also an extremely important part of this. If we're not able to find answers for Amy, something's got to change. And I know, President Trump, people like him or not, and I'm not here to talk about politics, but he's got a very hard stance on it, and he's done a lot about it. We've been in touch with Marsha Blackburn's office, and we're trying to make things happen and get this in front of him, because my opinion is the man knows how to get things done. That's all we can do is all we can do, and we're trying to do it.
Brad, thanks for joining me. I wish you and your family the best to find some answers.
I appreciate it, Eddie. Thank you for taking the time, and you've been awesome, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, man. Hang in there.
All right, you too. All right, that's it, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will see you all next Tuesday.